In a village forgotten by kings and maps, a young girl named Cinderella lived not in joy, but in endurance. Her once noble father had passed away under strange and sudden circumstances, leaving her in the hands of her cold-hearted stepmother and two mocking stepsisters, Clarina and Griselda. Each day, she scrubbed the floors until her fingers bled and slept by the fireplace on a straw mat. The townspeople whispered about her, the girl who never complains, but no one ever asked her how she truly felt. Yet every night, when the house fell silent, Cinderella would sit by the flickering flames and speak softly into the smoke. If anyone out there hears me, I'm still holding on, but my heart is tired. Unbeknownst to her, someone did hear not from the heavens, but from deep beneath the earth. Dimble, the Dwarf of Honor, one of the ancient Earthkin who kept watch over the unspoken, the unnoticed, and the unjustly treated, had been listening for years. He lived within the roots of the oldest tree in the Forgotten Forest, and every kind word Cinderella spoke into the fire echoed through his underground halls. One cold winter night, as tears glistened in her eyes, Dimble finally rose. He emerged from the hearth in a swirl of glowing embers, wearing a long robe made of moss and stone, his beard shimmering like silver threads. "You have never cursed your abusers," he said. "And for that, your voice has reached the roots of the world. I come bearing honor, not pity." From his cloak, he drew a scroll sealed in ancient gold wax. "This is a contract of justice. Do you wish to be seen for who you truly are?" Cinderella, in awe, simply nodded. Just days later, the kingdom was filled with celebration. The queen had announced a grand masquerade ball to find not just a bride for the prince, but a new protector of the realm, a voice for the voiceless. Nobles rushed to sew gowns. Tailors worked by moonlight. Cinderella's stepsisters sneered with delight they would dazzle the prince with charm and deception. Cinderella dared to dream just once of attending. Her stepmother laughed. "You go to a royal ball? With cinders in your hair and soot on your face?" But that night, Dimble returned. He did not grant wishes, he honored worthy hearts. With him, he brought gifts not of magic, but of memory and meaning. A gown sewn from moonlight threads spun from the tears of the lonely. Shoes were not made of glass, but of living crystal that sang when she walked. A cloak that shimmered with every good deed she'd ever done. But he gave her a single warning. "You must leave before the 13th chime, not the 12th. For if you stay past the 13th, your heart will be seen by all, no masks, no secrets, only truth." At the ball, Cinderella's entrance silenced the music. She glided through the marble halls like starlight. The prince was enchanted, but Cinderella was more curious about a large mirror at the ballroom center, a mirror she could swear moved. Unbeknownst to her, Clarina and Griselda had disguised themselves, wearing stolen patterns and claimed identities. They tried to deceive the prince, impersonate virtue, and mock her under false masks. But when the clock began to chime once, twice, and then slowly onward, something inside the mirror awakened. At the 13th chime, the mirror cracked. Cinderella turned to leave, but her path was blocked by her stepsisters and gasping onlookers. Her cloak fell, her shoes dimmed. And then silence. The mirror showed their hearts. Cinderella's was gold, glowing with compassion and dignity. Clarina and Griselda's were blackened with envy and cruelty. The prince's heart was hollow, empty, and echoing. A hush fell, whispers rippled, and then came the queen wise, old and silent. She had seen everything. The queen turned to the prince. "You sought a bride of beauty, but this girl carries honor which you cannot even recognize." Turning to Cinderella, she said, "Child, I name you ambassador of the forgotten. Will you serve, not rule? Will you carry the truth of your heart across kingdoms?" But Cinderella did not answer at once. She turned to Dimble, who had quietly stepped out from the shadow of the mirror. "You taught me honor is not about being seen, but being true. I accept, but only if I may choose where I belong." So she refused the palace and, instead, chose a life of service. Dimble built her a cottage at the Crystal Falls, where she taught children to read, fed the hungry, and offered counsel to the lost. And every month, she visited the queen to speak for those whose voices were ignored. The Dwarf of Honor? He returned to his roots, but legend says if you speak kindly to the fire when no one listens, he may still hear you. A full year had passed since the night of the 13th chime. Cinderella, now known across Emberlyn as the voice of the forgotten, lived humbly at the Crystal Falls, a place where wildflowers whispered secrets and the water hummed ancient lullabies. Every month she rode to the palace not in gold, but on a simple horse named Whisper to speak before the queen about injustices in the kingdom. Hungry children, displaced farmers, neglected widows. Dimble had vanished back into the earth, his promise fulfilled. Or so everyone thought. But deep below, in the cavern of hollow roots, a different force had awakened. Malgrin, the keeper of false honor, a banished earthkin who fed on vanity, flattery, and deception, had heard of Cinderella's rise. A girl crowned by truth? He sneered from his throne of twisted vines. Let's see what becomes of her when her roots are cut. It started small. Her speeches were shortened, her voice drowned out by jealous nobles. Then, rumors spread that she had bewitched the queen, that she was secretly a witch, that her shoes were cursed. Children who once sang her name in the streets now looked at her with confusion. Even Whisper the horse refused to ride. She called into the fireplace, "Dimble, if you hear me, I don't know what's happening." But the flames remained silent. Until midnight, a single stone rolled from the ashes. Etched on it, "The roots are bleeding. Come to the hollow tree." Armed with nothing but her cloak and the cracked crystal shoes, Cinderella journeyed to the hollow tree, the same place Dimble once emerged from. There, she entered the earth, descending down tunnels that whispered old names and forgotten truths. In the end, she found Dimble, weak and flickering like a dying ember. "Malgrin, he feeds on falsehood," Dimble wheezed. "He reversed what we built." "How do we stop him?" Cinderella asked. "You must walk through the Hall of Reflections," Dimble said. "If you lie, if you hate, if you falter, you become his." Cinderella entered a glowing chamber of mirrors, not glass, but reflections made of truth. Each mirror showed versions of herself. One was angry, blaming everyone who hurt her. One was vain, wearing a crown and laughing as the poor begged. One was afraid, running from her own shadow. "All these are you," Malgrin whispered from the shadows. "You suppress them, but you can't destroy what you deny." But Cinderella did not fight the mirrors. She faced each one and said, "I have been angry. I have wanted power. I have been afraid. But I chose kindness, and I choose it again." At those words, her crystal shoes shattered, not in defeat, but in rebirth. From the shards rose a crown of roots and gold, the crown of the Earthkin. Malgrin roared. The cave trembled. "No one is purely honorable." But the brave chooses honor anyway, even when it hurts. With one step, she placed the crown on Dimble's brow. His strength returned, and with it, the tree of honor burst through the cavern, sending vines of light through the land. Malgrin was bound by truth turned into a stone mask, forever silent. The Queen of Emberlin, now aged and weary, abdicated her throne in silence and honor. Cinderella rebuilt the Crystal Falls cottage not alone this time, but with villagers who remembered. Dimble now appeared only on rainy nights, sitting by the fire like an old friend. And whenever someone tried to rewrite history or silence truth, a single vine would grow overnight outside their door, reminding them, honor listens, always. Since the defeat of Malgrin and the restoration of the Tree of Honor, peace reigned in Emberlin. Cinderella, now known across distant lands as the root of the realm, became a legend living among her people, teaching, healing, and guiding. Dimble, the Dwarf of Honor, had grown older, the magic of the earth slowing, his eyes dimming like twilight stars. But peace, like glass, can crack in silence. One morning, 3 mysterious crowns arrived at the palace, each carved from stone, ice, and fire with one message. The forgotten kings are rising, Emberlin must bow. The queen's advisors dismissed it. Cinderella, however, felt something ancient stirring in the wind. That night, Dimble summoned her to the base of the Tree of Honor, its roots now glowing a sickly red. "The crowns are from the old tribes, the ones buried after the last great war," he whispered. "Someone is awakening them, someone who wants to unmake the world as we know it." And then he said something that chilled her. "One of your own has betrayed you." Cinderella began to investigate and uncovered secrets buried beneath the palace floor. There, she discovered a hidden vault of black swords weapons made not by man but by shadow. They carried no reflections, they hummed with old hatred. And worst of all, they had been forged recently. The queen, now ill and bedridden, confessed a truth. "Before I named you root of the realm, I promised Emberlin's throne to another. A nobleman named Lord Varel, once exiled for cruelty, had returned in secret. He had entered the circle of counselors, and with gold and lies, he won half of the court to his side. He had made a pact with the Crown of Fire, one of the forgotten kings, offering the kingdom in return for power. 'Your honor is a threat to him,' Dimble said. 'He cannot control the truth, so he'll try to destroy it. One moonless night, Lord Vorel struck. Fire split the palace, ice froze the city gates. Stones rose from the ground to imprison nobles. The three forgotten kings, risen from tombs bound in ancient fury, marched toward Emberlin. Cinderella, now standing alone before a fallen court, did not raise a sword. She raised her hand to the Tree of Honor and whispered, "Let every voice rise that once was silenced." Across the realm, ordinary people stood up. Farmers who remembered her kindness. Widows she sheltered, children she taught, soldiers who had once been ignored. Dimble, weakened but proud, lifted the staff of echoes, calling every earthkin and whispering root to war. What followed was not a battle of might, but a battle of memory. The Crown of Stone tried to bury the city, but the villagers lifted the rocks. The Crown of Ice froze time, but the warmth of unity broke the spell. The Crown of Fire burned with rage, but Cinderella stepped through the flames and said, "You cannot burn truth. You only make it brighter." With that, the Tree of Honor burst forth a second time, its roots dragging the evil crowns back into the abyss. The battle was won, but at a cost. Dimble, too old and too drained, sat at the base of the tree, a smile on his face. "I came to honor your voice," he said. "But in the end, you honored us all." With a final breath, he crumbled into crystal dust, and from that dust grew a second tree beside the first. The people called it the Heart Root. Cinderella never became queen. She refused the throne once more. Instead, she declared Emberlin a realm without kings ruled by councils of wisdom, honor, and service. Children were taught the story of the Dwarf of Honor in every school. The broken were sheltered, the liars were challenged. The truth became a tree that anyone could sit beneath and be heard. And in the fireplaces across the realm, it is said that if you whisper a question with a true heart, you might still hear a voice in the crackling flame. A voice that says, "Honor listens, always."